Alright everyone, welcome back to the channel. So I'd like to first and foremost thank everyone for their continued support. As of the time of this recording, I have 31 subscribers within 4 or 5 videos I made. And I really appreciate the ones that have tuned in to watch my videos. So I'm just going on a little evening cruise through the backcountry roads by my house, and we're gonna tell a little story tonight too of the first motorcycle I ever bought back in 2003. In the spring of 2003. So I knew I wanted a bike. I had a friend of mine, he had a 99 CBR F4i, and I always knew I loved motorcycles, so you know, I had to kind of start the process and had to get in and get my motorcycle license and go through the whole 9 yards. And I started saving up for my bike. I didn't want a payment, so at the time I was 22, you know, somewhere around that age. So then in 03, Yamaha announced the redesigned YZF R6. So that was the first year where it looked like it had 4 little circles for the headlights, and it was the first of that model year that it was going to be, and I fell in love with it. Yamaha blue. I was like, all right, that's going to be the bike. The MSRP for that at the time in 03 is going to be $79.99, $8,000. So I've looked at a bunch of bikes. I looked at the Katana 600. I looked at the Gixxer 600s. And I knew I wanted a sport bike. So I just kept looking. Then when you know, at the time you had magazines. There wasn't too much on the internet back then. It existed, but not like today. The magazine came out with that YZF R6, Yamaha blue, and I was just like, that's the one. I gotta have it. I moseyed my way down to the Yamaha dealership. That was about 45 minutes from my house in I think it's North Kingston, Rhode Island. I know I lived in Rhode Island. I think it was North Kingston, Rhode Island. It was by the beaches, put it that way. So I went in, I placed my deposit down, and I placed an order for an R6. I don't know, months later the phone call comes in and my new blue bike has arrived. So I go down there and I go to pick it up, and they got a used 01 red with a custom, they had custom painted the tail white, so it was like a red and white paint scheme. Already had the high mount exhaust, already had the undertail kit, already had all the fun accessories that I was going to have to add to the 03 brand new one. I said, yeah, I'm going to cancel my order. I want this one. So that was, you know, coming to the end of the previous model year, but I was going to save $2,000 for a bike that had 1,200, I think it was 1,200 miles, 1,250 miles on it. Steel braided brake lines, that was one of the key things. That was definitely a high dollar option back then. And that was it. That was the bike I chose. It was end of January. So they held it for me until it was about springtime, and this was my first bike. I only ever rode bikes when I took the MSF course, the motorcycle safety course. So I had them deliver it. I think it was no charge back then. They didn't charge for that kind of stuff back then. They delivered it to my house, and I was terrified taking that thing out of my little play-in for the first time. So I did. I had to muster up the energy. I had my Joe Rocket leather jacket, you know, matched with the red, with the matching red and black gloves. I had a Shoei. I got myself a Shoei helmet. It was the Jester, and it looked like a Joker paint job, Troy Lee Designs. You know, I got to put that money I saved getting the used one to get some nice gear. And I started driving around my neighborhood and what have you. So I think the next day, my buddy Jason, he's like, hey, I want to see your bike, bring it over. And he lived in downtown Providence. Well, that was my bright idea, second time ever taking the bike out, take the thing to downtown Providence through rush hour traffic to go visit him. He lived by Providence College. So he goes, that ride stunk, didn't it, when I got there? I was like, yeah, it did. So we hung out for a little bit and looked at the bike, and then I proceeded to head home. Well, on my way home, the traffic wasn't there anymore, and I started experimenting with what kind of power that machine had. And I remember it clearly. I was coming off of an exit ramp, and I had it leaned over pretty good, and I was flying. Let's say I was doing 95, 100. I wasn't in, you know, super triple digits or anything crazy like that. Well, sure enough, as I was coming on that on-ramp, there was an officer. He wasn't sitting there doing radar gun, he was just kind of passing. And what happened was there was a fire truck and a school bus. So I kind of made a decision to give it the gas so I didn't get stuck behind two huge vehicles. I was new to motorcycle riding. Oh, let's give it a little bit of beans right here. So I kind of hit it like I just did there. It was perfect timing for this road to come. And I get the whoop whoop. Officer pulls me over. He goes, you know why I pulled you over? I said, I can probably guess. You know, he goes, how long have you had your motorcycle license? I tell him, I don't know, a month or two. He goes, how long have you had this motorcycle? 2 days. Yeah, he wasn't very happy with me. So because he didn't radar me, he wrote me up for 10 over the speed limit. And in Rhode Island at the time, they used to have a good driving record kind of thing. So if you showed up to court, you could plead guilty and good driving record, and you'd get a freebie. I think it was once every 3 or once every 5 years you could get a good driving record freebie. So I got to use my freebie on that. So I thought that was pretty interesting. My first bike, second day on it, you know, I saw a situation where my safety, I didn't want to get stuck behind a school bus and a fire truck. So I kind of hit it at the end of that on-ramp to the highway, and there happened to be an officer just coming up in traffic behind me. So that's my story with my R6. I kept that thing for the whole spring and summer, and then in July I just got this bright idea to move to San Diego, California from Rhode Island, and I sold that bike back to the same dealership I bought it from for $5,000. So I lost $1,000. I had $1,000. I got to play with it for a couple of months. And I moved out to California. And it was actually a few years later when I was in Pittsburgh. It took till 2006 before I got a motorcycle again. I ended up with an 06 GSXR 600. And that's when I really started to get into my motorcycle riding skills and really start to push the limits of what you can do on a motorcycle. So that's my quick story on my first motorcycle, and other things that came with that first motorcycle is I got picked up a nail. I had to go and replace my brand new Pilot Powers. That's fun. You know, I worked those right into my deal. There's a po-po officer right here, so I better make sure I stop. We're gonna give him a nice little wave too. This is usually a road I give it the beans on too. Oh, and this house, I want that house one day, someday. So yeah, I ended up in 06 when I was in Pittsburgh. I tell you, those were some of the best motorcycle riding roads, aside from living into the Smoky Mountains and probably the West Coast. Pittsburgh had a lot of twisty, curvy roads you could go and ride on. You know, a lot of ups and downs, elevation changes, and it didn't take much. You know, when you hear Pittsburgh, you think of a city once you got out of the city limits, 3 or 4, miles outside the city, it was a lot of open space to ride our machines. And met a bunch of people there, met a lot of friends, made a lot of friends, still are friends with some of them. Then I moved to Jacksonville, Florida, fast forward, and those are the worst motorcycle riding roads in the world. Straight on ramps and 90-degree rights and lefts stoplights. So, but anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this quick little ride and a quick little story on my first ever motorcycle, and a few little motorcycles after that. If you stuck around this long, please do me a favor, give me that thumbs up and subscribe, and we'll see you next time on Carolina Motovlog.